welcoming Mr. Praveen Singhal, the CFO of Maya and Vidorno, who shall be giving us practical inputs on how best to manage finances in and for your subsidiary. Mr. Singhal is a chartered accountant with over 20 years of experience in assurance, direct and indirect taxation. He has supported the finance function for over 100 subsidiaries of foreign companies in India in his capacity as CFO of Maya and Vidorno, and has previous experience working for companies like Manroland and Reliance. Welcome, Mr. Singhal.
Thank you, Suhasini. It's my pleasure to be here for this last session of India Business Month, which is jointly hosted by M+V, Altios, and India Connected. A warm welcome to all my attendees and my fellow panelists. And it was really a very beautiful session where Thibaut and Aditya had a very beautiful conversation, and in which they were sharing their experiences about the Thibaut, how they set up their manufacturing facility into India, which are more on the sourcing side, where they were sourcing raw materials from India. So, Asni already has spoken about me. I think so. Let's spoke about the topic, which is more important right now. And I think so. Right now, the topic of the day that we know that a lot of foreign companies are already there into India in some form. They are already doing some business, maybe into the services, maybe into manufacturing, maybe either selling goods or procuring the goods, as we have seen in the other case. They could be there into India by by having their own wholly owned subsidiary. They could be there into India by having the JV, or maybe in some other legal form, which could be a license or a branch office. So over here, definitely the principals sitting over there abroad, they look for a certain key information that how to control the finance of the Indian operations, what are the focus area they need to review. And over here, the topic of the day is that we would like to just touch upon certain focus area which sitting abroad, the shareholders, the controllers would like to see, and so that they can control the local operations of India remotely much more efficiently. Next slide, please. So in today's our presentation, we will discuss more about the focus area. Then apart from that, we would also like to touch upon the certain area of interest, that what are the various possible ways of funding the Indian operations. Something already has spoken in the earlier discussions, but I think so we can have much more detailed discussion over here. What are the various ways of funding could be there, and then that can be evaluated, which could be the best possible way and the best economical way of funding the Indian operations, because I think so that is the one topic which is always there on the minds of the foreign principals for the Indian operations. The one more interesting topic is more about the profit repatriation options, because definitely all the businesses which are getting done at the end of the day, when the money is getting made, the idea is to how to take out the money. And definitely before we know that when the money is getting made, we know that we need to know that how the profits are getting made can be repatriated to the home country from where the money is getting in. And in last, we will also speak about the business health checkup, where basically it's more about methodology, that what are the various areas that actually need to be covered if we really want to see about the operations of India. It can be done by the internal, it can be done by the external service provider. That again, over here today, we will speak more about the methodology and what are the focus area that we need to cover. Next slide, please. So coming to our Indian operations, so what are the areas that how we will know that it's need improvement? So over here, to understand the local Indian business, I will say that there are two aspects. One is quantitative and second is qualitative. So when we say more about quantitative, it's more about analyzing the data. The data, basically, the data is financial in nature. It could be pertaining to the sales or the inventory or the purchase which our business is doing. It could be about the expenses which are getting incurred. about understanding the current processes and policies which are there in the system, and also understanding about the structure of the organization, what type of reporting systems that we are having. So that is more on the quantitative side. And coming on the qualitative side, we really need to understand what is the perspective of the shareholders, because they are the one who had invested the money, and that their perspective also need to be understood from that from what they feel from their point of view, and also the first-hand impression of the employees, of the persons who are responsible for getting the business delivered. So it's really we need to understand the both sides, from the shareholder perspective and also from the employees perspective who are there at the ground, and also need to understand the current processes. So we really need to, and apart from that, about understanding the culture, because definitely there is a we are there everybody speaks about the cultural differences between the various countries. So over here, apart from that, we also need to understand about the cultural perspective. And once we have all that information, and then we can definitely have a detailed management perspective, that what improvements could be there, what improvement that we need to assess, and with that we can look on other focus areas that we need to see. Next slide, please. So the what major focus area over here is the compliance. And compliance, though it looks like a big word, and in India, yeah, with the changing regulations, sometimes the government is doing a lot of things for the age of doing, but again, whether that is actually age of doing, or what are the additional compliances that a business need to actually undertake, that really need to be seen. So over here, compliance definitely is the one of the big topic which is always there on the mind of the foreign shareholders, also on the mind of the controllers. And when we say compliance, is not only following the rules or the laws or the which are there, it's also following the policies, so that which are all the what are required compliances are there, which are getting followed automatically. So we need to have the various policies in place to have the compliance followed. And we can see that in India, though we had various statutes that we need to be followed when we're running the business into India, but there are certain specific key acts that we need to really keep into mind when we do business into India, and that we can see in the next slide. So when we do the business into India, though we had we can list down a lot of various statutes that we need to really see. But the main statute which we mentioned is more about the Companies Act. In the Companies Act is basically we deal about our secretarial stuff, that how the board meetings are getting are there, how our shareholders, how the shares things need to be handled, about all that topics of AGM. The annual filing with the Companies Act. So this is more of the registrar of companies topic that we need to see. We are not going into that detail, but typically the idea is just to see what are the various acts that which really need to be followed once we are doing the business into India. The second is more about the income tax, which basically we deal about withholding taxes, we deal about filing of corporate annual tax returns into India. And the GST, though it's a new act which came in 17, we replaced the old VAT, old excise with the GST. The India was more of a one nation, one tax. We had the one tax across the country, but still in India we follow this dual GST structure. We had the state, the GST levy by the center. We had the GST levy by the state. So like under the GST, we had dual GST structure, though it's not that common to Europe. In Europe, it's more of a single GST structure. But over here, we have this federal GST structure, and that need to be kept in mind. In India, we had various states. If we are doing businesses from the various states, and then we will need the registration in all the various states across. That is also the one of the key points which need to be kept into the mind. Coming to next is more about the FEMA and the RBI. FEMA and RBI basically they are getting dealt with because any foreign company who is doing the cross-border transactions where the foreign currency is either getting bought into India or foreign currency is getting sent from India for any transaction. So we need to really follow all the regulations of FEMA and RBI. RBI do have the various circular for the either for the borrowing or either for all the remittances which has to be made. So we need to really keep into mind all the regulations which are pertaining to FEMA and RBI. And last is more about the SEBI, which is more on the listed companies, which is actually not applicable for the privately held unlisted company. We haven't covered the topics which are more on the labor law side or the other laws, but more on the commercial side, these are the various statutes that as a company we need to really consider that they are getting compiled with. So we need to have a system in place. So we have an annual compliance calendar. So we have seen that there are annual compliance calendar in the place, and which can be filled in by the local person responsible. Could be shared with the overseas. There could be a separate compliance committee where the people from the various different departments or different stakeholders could be there, and they can make a report of the compliance and then they can report to the board, because definitely it's a duty of the directors to have all the compliance made, because anyway the entire liability will fall onto their shoulders. So I will say that to have that, so there could be a compliance calendar, there could be a compliance committee who reports to the board of directors on the quarterly basis or on the annual basis. So we really need to see that how we implement that. Yeah, next slide, please.
Great ideas.
So the one topic, I think so, one interesting topic is the funding. I think so definitely to run the Indian operations, the Indian operations needs the money, and over here we really need to explore what various ways of funding options could be there. Because definitely there are some traditional ways of funding which Thibaut also spoke in the session that okay, I think so they were having the three key pillars. One was the share capital, second was the loan for the working capital, and then third was the local grant. And I think so they were eligible for that. So that's why it's not that all businesses are eligible. That again depends on type of business a company is into. And I can say that the grants are typically more applicable when you are into some sort of manufacturing activity. It is typical, or some typical export of goods or services. But in the typical trading activity or trading import and sell, and these grants are actually not particularly applicable. But anyway, that is a different topic. So let's focus on funding, and we will try to cover the various funding options that as a business which could be there. Yeah, next slide. So the first is the traditional way of funding, which is more of a investment through the share capital. It could be a equity share, it could be a preference share capital, it could be a convertible debenture. So everything is more of a traditional way where which is normally the company use as the first step when they start their operations. And over here, yes, getting the money in is much easier. The only way is that how to take out the money once you have the surplus there in the books. So that is the main challenge here. But anyway, to start the business, there has to be some share capital. So normally this is the traditional way. The only thing we need to keep in mind, still we have some sectoral caps, and there are some pricing compliance that at what price the share capital can be issued, that need to be seen into mind. And we had some reporting mechanism for that. So considering that this is the you can see the traditional way of funding, which is very widely used, and this is always used as the first step. Maybe certain we can use this particular route for the initial 6 months of requirement, or maybe for the very initial requirement, and then for the other requirements we can have the other funding routes, which we'll speak of in our next slides.
Could I quickly interject you here? We are talking of funding an Indian subsidiary, and when a subsidiary is newly incorporated here, how does a company assess the actual capital requirement at this stage?
To assess the capital requirement, usually the business plan is the key. Every business which is getting set up, normally they have their business plan, and their business plan typically tell us the two type of need. One is what is the capital expenditure which they need, and one is the working capital. And definitely, once we know that how much of capital expenditure they need for the year one, and how much of working capital they need for year one, so that will tell okay, how much of share capital which a business need to plan once they're setting up their Indian operations. So everything actually will flow from the business plan and need to be divided into two categories. One is more on the capex side, and second is on the working capital side.
Okay, so ideally just for 1 year's business plan should be enough to calculate or assess the exact requirement for the first year, right? Or should we keep a more
means
liberal figure
if you are speaking of really some very big projects like which are typically very big manufacturing setups, which takes a very long gestation period to set up the facility, so then it has to be a very longer period. But when we speak of typically smaller setup where the business can be set up and running within 1 year of time, so then 1 year should be fine. If the longer the gestation period for before the business really start generating the revenues, so then we need to see the longer period. But otherwise, the 1 year of period should be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So coming to next slide, please. This is also the external commercial borrowing, which Aditya already spoke about. So the external commercial borrowing is more like a loan. So for this loan from the parent company, it means it could be from the parent company, it could be from any foreign lender to the Indian operations. This route was very much regulated in the past, but over I can say that for the last 2 or 3 years, we had seen this route getting more and more liberalized. I remember in the earlier times, there were only few sectors which were eligible for this route, but now I can say that almost all the sectors, barring 1 or 2, all the sectors, they're actually eligible to have this ECB from the overseas to the Indian operations. And nowadays, ECB can be there into the foreign currency. ECB can be there into the local currency also. Because what happens once the ECB there is into the Indian currency, and the forex risk shifts from the local subsidiary to the principals. And once the ECB is there in the foreign currency, the forex risk remains on the shoulder of the Indian company. So again, that is more of a topic. There will be some forex risks, but if we want to shift the risk to principals, we can go for Indian rupees. Otherwise, we can go for our foreign currency ECB or the loans. And over it's a regulated regime that whatever the loans we want to pay, we need to make application. The Central Authority, Reserve Bank of India, they usually control everything, so they need to approve. There are monthly reporting mechanism, and over here there are the lock-in period also for the loan are also defined. Like for the capex, it's a lesser. For the working capital, it's more. Working capital, so it's again depend on the use of the funds. For the capex, it's very on the lower side. The rate of interest which are getting, because over here, what is the benefit? The principal can still earn some interest on the loans given, and the loan interest could be in the range of. So as for the circular, we had the maximum rate. I mean, how much of the maximum rate a company can pay, but there are no minimum rates. So over here, we can say that 4 to 5% of interest, up to 4 to 5% interest can be paid. But if the company wants to give a lower rate of interest, that is more than welcome. But again, that need to be seen from transfer pricing point of view. But apart from that, the banks, the circular allows for that. So we have seen that a lot of companies going for this route for the additional funding requirements, and because it's a if you compare the rate of interest compared to the local, it's in the lower side, and the only risk is about the forex risk is there, but I think so that can be managed with the forex tools which nowadays in place, and that's why we are seeing this route. A lot of money are now getting in from this route into India for our a lot of foreign subsidiaries.
Okay. Then you answered my next question already. I wanted to know which one was better, whether local financing would be better or ECB was better. So you've already obviously told us that ECB these days, with the kind of new reforms that have come in the ECB laws, it seems to be a better option as of now.
Yeah, yes. It's and main thing is the interest, because still if you see the local currency loans, though we had seen the reduction in the rates. First, a big reduction happened after demonetization. Then, after we had the big after COVID, also we had the reduced rate of interest. But still there is a gap. There is a gap of I can say that local loan would be something around minimum 9% of the rate will be there. So there will be still a gap of 4 to 5%. So that's why still ECB makes much more sense as compared to the local loans we are having.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Over here, we speak is more about the business arrangements. Apart from that, actual loans, I mean, that, and this is more of a we can have the extended credit terms for the goods and services which are getting supplied. So it's about changing with the credit terms. But over here, we need to keep into mind the circular of RBI, because there are circular of RBI that okay, how much of the maximum time of credit could be there. We can go up to 3 years, but there are certain declarations, certain conditions which you need to follow. And that we need to keep into mind, and once we follow that, so there is a chance to have the extended credit terms. And this could be a one way of giving the funding to the subsidiaries. And we have seen that a lot of companies who are more onto the trading side, they are using this particular route to fund their Indian operations. One business arrangement could be some advances, but again, for the advances from overseas to Indian companies, also for some services or supply of goods, there are also circular of RBI that we need to keep into mind, that we need to set off the advances within 6 months of the money received.
Okay.
So considering that, still we had some way for some funding, but over here I will say that these are again short-term in nature. These are not long-term solution. If you want to have some short-term solutions, these are some practical way of doing for a period of 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Next slide. So over here in the next slide, we will speak about the local borrowing. So local borrowing is very much possible. Yes. So local borrowings can be there again in the local books if the local books are having that strength, or otherwise if local books are not having that much of numbers in their books, then the loans can be there to the daughter company if the foreign company are giving the corporate guarantees or against the standby letter of credit, which is SBLC, and local credits are getting set up. So this is also very widely used route, which are used by the lot of foreign companies. The only thing is the interest rate, which you need to keep into mind. But over in this case, though the local company is not having any strength, any local collaterals, but still they can have the local rupee loan against the SBLC or the corporate guarantees, which are given by the principals to the local bankers. So
are there any challenges that the local subsidiaries face if they have to get if they want to borrow domestically?
it's not challenges, I can say that, because normally if we had enough collateral in the local books, then there is no requirement of this corporate guarantee or SBLC. Otherwise, by route of this corporate guarantee or SBLC, the local loan can be arranged. So it's over here. There is no RBI as such approval process. So it's more of a control at the level of the local authorized bank. And local authorized bank, once the documentation is done, they normally set up the limits, and again that limit, then the funds are released. So it's not a challenge. Whatever the procedural aspects for all the documentation that need to be followed, and once that is done, it is there. So as such, this is also very widely used. And because over here there is no forex risk. The local company is borrowing in rupee and paying into rupee, so there is no forex risk, though a bit higher interest rate.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Coming to next, our interesting topic is about the profit repatriation options. And over here, we will not go into that much of detail, but it's a very broad topic. So I would just like to stress upon some of the widely used routes for any foreign company, like dividend. Yes, this is a very common route, and over here also the Indian government has really has done a lot. The dividend distribution tax, which was there a year ago, that has been removed. Now there is no dividend distribution tax, and the local company can pay the dividends. Okay, identify how much dividend we can pay. We need to see the local company that regulations. But after that, dividend can be paid freely. There are some withholding taxes which a local company need to withhold, and then the money can be remitted freely to the foreign shareholders. But there is no dividend distribution tax that has gone. That is really a good relief. And also the share buyback and capital reduction, they are the specific topics for the specific scenarios. But apart from this specific scenario, royalty payments and payment for services, I would like to put dividend, royalty payment, and payment for services into the one category, one basket. So these are the very normal profit repatriation options that any foreign shareholder would like to have. Capital reduction or share buyback are more applicable in the specific scenarios where we have the surplus capital lying into the local books, and we don't have any use of the capital. Then we go for that particular two options. But otherwise, in the normal scenario, dividend, royalty, and payment for services are the very widely used. Royalty payments are again our local regulations don't specify. Okay, that there is no mandated minimum royalty or maximum royalty. Again, it's again subject to the transfer pricing. So whatever the transfer pricing says, that the transfer pricing benchmarking, the royalties can be paid if the trademark or the brand name are used by the local company for their business purposes. So royalty is very widely used. We need to create intercompany documents, and after all that, there will be some withholding taxes as we had in dividends, and it is on the same lines. Payment for services, again, it's for the some services which are provided by the parent company to the local company, and which are used for this. Like it can be for management consultancy, it can be for IT or any other expansion support. So these are the very widely used profit repatriation option that we are having. And I can say that in all these options, normally there are a withholding tax of around 10% in most of the cases if we have certain documents, and then the balance amount can be repatriated easily, because as such there are no such caps on sending the money to the foreign shareholders. Next slide. So over here, I think so we are now running short of time. I think so this is our the business health check. segment. Over here, we'd like to speak what are the various aspects that we really need to see when we are conducting the business health check or the corporate health check for any business. And over here, we would like to touch upon the areas which really we need to assess, so that after the end of assessment, we can a report or the actual outcome can be made about the what are the various corrective actions, or what are the focus areas that as a company we need to look into. Next slide. Over here, I think so. We are speaking about double T. Double T is basically trust and transparency, which is more about that. Do we have that trust and transparency from the Indian operations to the foreign shareholders? If that trust and transparency is there, then definitely everything is going on well. So over here, that we really need to determine, and that how we determine that we explain in our subsequent area focus areas. Next slide, please. So normally we have the reporting systems. All the subsidiaries normally do have the reporting system in place, but definitely where reporting systems are not there, a corporate health checkup can be there, and on the demand corporate health checkup can really identify what are the gaps that we are having. This corporate health checkup, what are the areas that we need to cover? So let's try to evaluate in some of the next slides. So we divide our focus area into these 8 segments. We have tried to explain. Like typically starting from the sales, it's more about the customers, more about the products, sales and marketing, competition. Coming to the expense, it's more about the analysis of all the expenses which are getting incurred. Need to identify from the various headwise, the HR or finance and accounts, all receivables or payables or inventory. Okay, what are the aging of inventories we are having? How much of doubtfuls we have? So and how much of whether we had the balance confirmations, whether what are the last supplies at the end of the cutoff period, do we have the enough provisions for the inventories, and what are the slow purpose, what are the inventory turnover ratios. So all that topics we really need to look into, and for in our corporate health checkup that we do. Next slide. Coming to the HR indicators, HR indicator over here, it's more about the salary cost. What are the salary cost we are having as a company, and try to benchmark with other companies which are into the same line of business. Some attritions. What are the trends we are having of sales per person? What is the appraisal process we are following? What are the trainings that we have done? What are the training requirements? We already touch upon the compliance topic. Again, we really need to where is the compliance calendar? Have the compliance calendar in place and see all the compliances are getting complied with, coming from taxes side, whether direct taxes or indirect taxes. Coming on the transfer pricing, what's about the study? Is documentation is there in place which is mandated for a company if transactions are more than 1 CR every year? What about the secretarial, how the secretarial records is there maintained? Where are the minutes are maintained for AGM, for annual general meeting of shareholders, for board of directors meeting? The labor law compliance requirements, that is also again dependent on the size of the organization. Next slide, please. And last is about the accounting. Definitely, what are the accounting manual that we are having, and what type of our accounting reconciliation process? What are the revenue recognition process? Do we have any auditors report remarks referring to the internal audit report remarks? coming to the order management, what are the order input processing. So all the topics which really link to the order management that we really need to look into. So these are some of the focus areas that we have to cover in our corporate health check or compliance check, or you can say the business health check, and these are very much required. I think so. Back to you, Swasini.
We have just about 7 minutes left, and we can definitely take up a few questions. And let me see how many questions there are. So we have quite a few questions here in the meanwhile. So say that finance is important. Is it better to have an advisory firm or a local team in your operations?
Okay. So that's that I will say that that depends on the size of the organization, and definitely I will say that with that so many of changes which are happening on the Indian side, with that now GST coming in, and for us, so it's always better to work with external partners. So who are the professionals. So to have somebody external advisory to work with them. Internal solutions could be there for certain basic accounting needs if the organization size if organization of that size. So it's more of a mix. If really organization have that much of requirement, if the organization is size is like that, they can go for some internal solution, but definitely there will be some need of some external advisory, because there are so much of topics which keep on changing on the recurring basis, because in India still for the professionals like us to keep a catch hold of all the changes getting so much of tougher. So I really understand for the internal team which would be much more tougher.
Okay, so it should be a combination of an external and an internal team so that everything's basically on the same page and we're all compliant at all times. So another question is, in case of cost plus margin options, whether the payment of services can be a method for repatriation. Will this not be subject to cost plus post booking such services in the subsidiary books?
So the cost plus method is actually it's not a method of profit repatriation. It's more of a funding method. It's more of a funding method, because in the cost plus what is happening, the cost is getting incurred in the local books, and the local subsidiary is making the invoice on monthly or quarterly or annual basis with the defined markup. And the markup remains in the local books. So the cost plus is more of a method which is getting used for funding the local operations. So and over there, then the margins are there, and for that margin, then we need to see how to take out the profits.
Okay. What is the best way to keep your account receivables under control?
The best way means there has to be like, okay, I think so, but the best way to have credit control, there has to be credit policy. So I think so, but again, that need to be seen from the business perspective. There has to be credit policy defined. There has to be credit control in place. Credit control in place means, from the systems point of view, there has to be proper system who really can implement the credit control. And apart from that, there has to be a strict vigil on the outstandings. There has to be a system where the automatic dunning letters are getting issued to our debtors who owe us the money. There has to be discussions between the credit control team and the sales team about the collection of the money. So these are the various steps that we need to follow to keep the things in control. And at the last, there has to be adequate provisioning if required for the undoubtful debts.
Okay, wonderful. I will take up one last question. This is your financial perspectives about setting up in an SEZ and export credit guarantee scheme.
So export guarantee, so this is typically applicable if some businesses which really want to set up in the export side. if we want to really set up some business where we want to set up export of goods or export of services. And definitely in the SEZ, we had an option to buy a lot of goods or buy a lot of import lot of goods or services without paying the applicable duties, because that is more of a saves the working capital. So by being operating in SEZ, that allows us to buy certain goods and services without paying the duties. And with this EGCC and the export guarantee credit commission, definitely whatever the exports that a business is doing, and in the unforeseen circumstances of that money is not getting collectible, that money can be it's more like insurance. It's more like export insurance. If we had a bona fide case of where money is not getting paid, it can be paid back by this EGCC. So these are the two financial aspects which pertains to this.
Okay. So we have run out of time. Thank you so much, Mr. Singhal, for all your inputs and for taking time out today to actually explain and give inputs and your personal experiences and sharing your personal experiences with the way that you have managed all subsidiaries. Thank you very much once again.